Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. And so for tonight's story time, I thought I would take you back to a time in 2016 when I went on tour with a group through Italy. And it would have been my second, well, I had done two other childhood tours with my parents, and then one after my father passed away through Europe. But this would have been my fourth European tour. So I decided to focus on Italy. And so I remember it was, I would be spending my birthday away. And I think it was it 10 days or 14 days? I think it was 10 days. And I wanted my mother to come along because I thought it would help our relationship a little bit, but she said no. She wasn't feeling up to it. It was very tiresome. Of course, she wouldn't have been able to do it. I hadn't realized how grueling it could be, but I managed to keep up entirely with the group at all times. Oh, that was really an interesting trip. Um, where do I start? Okay. I can name off some of the places that we were going to be visiting. We would start out in Rome, and we made our way to Milan. Maybe not necessarily in this order. Pisa, Torino, Como, Venice, um, Bologna, Assisi, and Ferrari, Ferrara, and maybe a couple of other places. I'm not remembering everything clearly. And of course, I have a great many photographs, but because of the position where my photographs are right now, I cannot transfer them very easily into this location. So I couldn't even upload anything to insert into this video. So I don't know. I wish I could show you Como because Como was so beautiful. Anyway, I started out the trip not that healthy. I had began with an insect bite that became infected, and I had to be put on antibiotics just prior to leaving. And I think I had just finished the antibiotics. No, I was still taking them. I remember taking them along with me. That was really upsetting to me. And I remember not feeling so hot with my stomach. And so my mother was very worried. She wanted me to cancel the trip, but an insect bite wouldn't have covered, you know what I'm saying? And I wasn't willing to cancel it anyway. So already, remember when I was talking to you about my other European tour that I had the premonition of something wacko was going to happen? Well, this was my premonition. It started out badly even before I left. So now I'm not totally writing the trip off as a disaster. It wasn't a total disaster. In my case, it was an adventure. Oh, Verona. That's the other spot that I forgot to mention. Verona was beautiful. Anyway, I left my city, and most of the people were coming from USA. So there was nobody in my group at all when I left. So I got to Rome, and then realized at that time that the bus was going back and forth, bringing different groups of people at different times. So we would all meet up around 6 p.m. that evening, and that would have been, it would have been the first night, and then I believe the next day it would have been Florence. Okay, I forgot to mention Florence. So we met up with the group, and we ate across from the hotel, not far. The tour the tour guide was a clown. He was a total clown. What can I say about him? He had us all in stitches, but he was very, how can I put this? He was, I don't know how to say it, but he really drove me up a wall. He was really, I don't know what the word for it is. He was always teasing me, and he was always trying to make jokes with me because I had told him upon arrival that I was on medication. I wasn't doing too well, but I was going to be okay. I was looking forward to the trip. So he had that in his head. He was about in his 30s, I would say. And he was, my God, guys, he was just a raging ball of energy. And he really, he really did a good job in keeping the momentum up with the group. And I remember when we were in Florence, it was hard for a lot of people because it was so hot. And that would be the first day. I remember wearing a sun hat, and he kept calling me darling. I hated that. And I remember being hot. I was keeping up with the group pretty good, but I had an ice cream. And you know what happens when I have ice cream in Italy. I, I fall so in love with the flavor that I eat it, and I never stop until I'm finished. But that day, I wasn't doing too well. I remember skipping all of my lunches. We would usually have dinner in the evening and breakfast in the morning, and lunch wherever we happened to stop on our own. And I remember never being hungry. And so that day, instead of lunch, I had ice cream, just like I did when I was 6 years old. And so I remember being enchanted. I mean, my uncle at the time was living in Florence, and I we were only there for about we were there overnight. No, we weren't there overnight. We drove through, and we were there for about 3 hours before we had to go back to the hotel and go for dinner. So, guys, we had no time at all. I already knew this prior to going on the trip, that Florence would just be a day thing and not an actual overnight for 2 days. And so I thought to myself, wouldn't you know it, the one location that I would have wanted to have a little extra time, I just won't be able to make it and call anybody, you know. But that was okay anyway, because I wasn't on that great terms with my uncle, who's now passed away. So anyway, I remember we visited boutiques. I did a little tiny bit of shopping. I didn't see much that I really wanted. We went to see the cathedral, Santa Maria Novella, I think it was. And it was beautiful, guys, because at that point, I was studying in university. I was studying art history and history. And so all these spots that I was hitting, I knew about the cathedrals, the art, the artists who built them, who sculpted the works, and on and so forth. And at the time, that was very interesting to me. It still is. I actually have about $25,000 worth of scholarships to go back to university, which I left in 2018 when my mother went into the hospital. But I was only there part-time, guys. And, the hassle with the parking and the hassle with bureaucracy there, I just figured it's not worth it. Even if I had to take the bus and not drive there, I get bus sick. Now, after that tour, I finally realized I do get bus sick. When I think of the motion in the bus, and I've always been like that. But, I put up with a lot of discomfort going through Europe in buses. because of tours, but I know that me and buses do not get along very well. There's something about that motion. I can't handle it. My stomach feels like it has rocks in it by the end of the day. um, anyway, so we went about our way. Florence, Pisa, Torino. Torino was beautiful. It was rainy. I remember going out after we went to see the cathedral, the monks of Capuchin, and I remember going out to dinner on my own, which is what I wanted to do. Dinner was on our own that night. We had an itinerary. Some dinners were included as with the group. Some days was spent apart. I love the days spent apart because I was quite uncomfortable with one person in the group, besides the tour guide, of course. And I'll get to that in a little while. It was very creepy, guys. And so, anyway, after Torino, the pace began to pick up. We were getting off and on, off and on. It was really a whiz. I remember staying in these hotels that were like in the red light district. And then I realized it was for our own safety. I guess it was dangerous there. Guys, I've never had a situation in Italy where I've been robbed. Now, I don't say that with disappointment. I say that with astonishment because almost everybody I speak to, even Italian people themselves, have recounted stories to me of how they were robbed. Not point blank, but theft behind their back. Passports, credit cards, you name it, luggage. And so I remember also, what I forgot to tell you, going to Europe with a carry-on. I bought enough for 10 days. I had about 5-6 outfits. I had underwear for 10 days, of course. And then I had a couple of sets of pajamas, and that was it, guys. I traveled very light. I had about 3 or 4 pairs of shorts, a couple of skirts, and about 4 or 5 tops, a couple of pairs of shoes. I ended up bringing 2 or 3 pairs, maybe too many shoes. And I almost lost a pair, but everything was okay. I didn't lose anything. I think that somebody did take some money out of my luggage when we left everything on the bus, because I noticed money gone and I thought, I didn't spend that. But anyway, I had my credit card and everything was included. I didn't bring much. Honestly, guys, I didn't plan to spend much money because we weren't going to have that kind of time. And really, by the time we were done with dinner or on our way to dinner, around 6-7 o'clock in the evening, all the stores were closing. So it was a little bit of a letdown, but I'd been through Europe before and bought till I dropped. So I wasn't disappointed about that. But anyway, so by the time that we hit Verona, maybe even before Verona. Now, we hit Verona about 4 days before our departure date. And I remember it being so enchanted with Verona. We went to see the famous Romeo and Juliet house, where that scene was supposedly taken place. And I remember I have so many pictures of it, guys, and it was so beautiful. And the whole city there was almost like a staged theater. And I remember walking up and down the boulevard, and I bought shoes. I did buy shoes. And what else did I buy? I bought a wallet for my mother, and I bought a few trinkets for myself. Nothing, very tiny things. I looked, but I didn't see much that I really wanted, except for those shoes. And so I bought the shoes. And I think I'm forgetting a purchase. If I think of it, I'll tell you. I actually did not buy that much, and I was so tired, guys. Um, the group had begun to complain, not complain, but note that I never joined the group on the dinner nights. I joined them 2 or 3 times. But guys, I was so tired. We would get to the hotel, um, either arriving from another city or having stayed there from the night before, and again another night in that city. And at 7 o'clock, 7:30, I couldn't keep my eyes open. I was exhausted. And we would have to be up. I would have to be up at 7 in order to wash my hair and be with the group by about 9 o'clock for breakfast. And even if I didn't eat much, I usually did have quite a hearty breakfast. I would want coffee. And so began to remark. I think some of the comments may have been nasty because they were mostly said in my absence. But I didn't take very kindly to it because I was exhausted. And I think I may have looked a little younger than I actually was. Nobody really, realized that I was a woman in my 50s that could have been possibly tired at the end of the day. Mind you, these were all grandmother and granddaughter families, older couple. No swinging young people or anything like that. There were a couple of youngsters and a couple of young guys and girls, but all in families, you know what I mean? They weren't traveling on their own. So it was a good group for me. I wouldn't have done well with a bunch of swingers, that's for sure. I'm a very boring person at that. So anyway, guys, I would just couldn't wait for the night to come so I could crawl into my bed and sleep and sleep. And I would always have that wake up call in the morning, or there's no way that I would be able to get up by myself. That was nerve-wracking. Trying to make sure that the hotel would actually call my room, and they always did. So thank God I always made it out the door in time, and I was never late for anything. However, the last 4 nights, 3, 4 nights, I barely made an appearance. I barely made an appearance in the group's dinner, in the group dinners, because, guys, I began, by the time we got to Venice, I began to come down with something that felt to me, and I'd had it many times before, to be a bladder infection. Now, I remember the day after we went through Verona, which was the most amazing, surreal day that I must have had in my entire life. It was beautiful. It was a beautiful sunny day, and I just loved being there. I remember walking through the streets and going into these cosmetic shops, and people were saying, what do you use on your face? And I said this and this. They were selling the creams that I used and complimenting me on how well I looked. And people were very nice there. They were charming. Of course, they knew I was a tourist. Even though I could speak some Italian, they knew that I was a tourist. So, but they were very, very charming and very humble. They weren't arrogant. I never had a problem with anybody there. Verona was beautiful. After that, we headed out to Como. And Como, guys, Como was absolutely, Ocean's 11. That movie didn't do it justice. You haven't seen it unless you've sat right on the boulevard drinking your espresso or cappuccino and looking at the ocean. It reminded me so much of my beach house. Not the actual city, but the view. Oh God, guys. If I can, I'll somehow try to upload a clip from my Google Drive, and then maybe you guys can see what I'm talking about. But I won't be able to attach it to this video. You know what I'm saying? I don't know how to do that. So anyway, Como, we spent a good 3 hours there. People had lunch. I had some coffee. And I remember going to the washroom in Como. And I remember being so happy sitting there on my own. There were other groups around me, of course. But because I began to realize that I was maybe coming down with something, I couldn't figure it out. I didn't walk around too much. There was a cathedral right there where we were. I went to take a little peek in it. It was apparently closed for viewing, so I couldn't go in. It was a weekday. But I bought some magazines. I remember I bought those art history magazines, which I love. They're at every news corner in where my beach house was, also in Italy. And so every time I hit a newsstand, I would look for those magazines, and I still have them. And I remember being so, relaxed and peaceful. And I cried, guys. I cried when we were boarding the bus. I didn't want to leave. I actually, thought to myself that no, I'm going to break away from the group and just stay here. But at that point, I didn't have much cash. I had my credit card, but I panicked and I didn't stay. But I remember this is the point where I began to get really creepy feeling about this one particular female passenger. She was about my age. I believe she was Latin. She seemed like a nice person, but guys, there was something very off. And I just can't, I stayed very cool and detached. I didn't try to get involved into too many conversations with her because she had this way of I don't know what it was. Maybe I do know what it was and I don't want to say it, but I stayed as far apart from her as I could. And I remember for quite a while, like for maybe the next 48 hours, that no matter where we went, she would always be sneaking up behind me and brushing up against me. And I had it, guys. I was a nervous wreck, and the tour guide didn't make things any better for me. He just teased me, and he was merciless. He was really ruthless about it. And finally, I got to the point where I said, if you value your career here, you keep your mouth shut, because I'm at the end of my rope. I'm not feeling well, and I want you to leave me alone. So it kind of worked. It kind of worked. So anyway, but I think all people go through that when they travel. You get hot, you get sweaty, you feel like crap. And plus it was my birthday, so they were planning something. They were planning a little surprise for me, and it was very sweet. So that was part of it. That was part of the whole thing. And so once we left Como with many tears and we got to Venice, they said, now we're going to go and cool off. You out, because we have to plan this surprise. But I was more than happy to walk around the city and talk to people. They spoke to me in Spanish. I don't understand why. But I responded to them in Spanish, and I also spoke to them in Italian. And I looked around for something to buy, but it was too gimmicky. At least the shops that were there at the time, it was too gimmicky. I didn't see anything that I really liked or really needed. So I let everything go. And again, I had that feeling that I had to go and urinate, I'm sorry to say. But when I actually got to the restroom, There was nothing. I remember sitting on was it a fountain, the edge of a fountain, and I remember putting something down before I sat to wait for the group while they planned my surprise. And I remember right away feeling that a cold, clammy feeling. And I thought to myself, oh my God, how many millions and millions of people must have sat in this spot after all these centuries? And here I go to plunk myself down. And now I felt weirdly, after I sat down on that fountain edge, I felt much worse. The whatever it was inside of me, I couldn't go to the bathroom anymore. I felt bloated and full of liquid, but I couldn't. I'd had coffee and some drinks. I remember having a lot of peach iced tea, and I remember having a sore throat. I was pretty sick in Torino. I remember being really sick. And I know that when I go to Italy, that's what happens to me because I sweat and then I drink cold things. And over there, it gets you. And so I remember being maybe feverish and out of it. I definitely knew that something was coming on. And so Venice brought me not much good luck. I didn't return to Venice after that afternoon because I took ill. I'd been to Venice before. I wasn't that enchanted with Venice. I still love it. There's so much history there. But I'd seen it before, so I was okay about that. We took the ferry over to our hotel, which was in a beautiful little village, guys. It was like a resort village where I could see that there were cabins and guys, I was enchanted. I was absolutely enchanted with this hotel. I thought, I want to leave again for that, the second time that day. I said to myself, I want to leave the group and stay here for the rest of the 3 or 4 days that I have left. I love it here, but then I wouldn't have known how to get back. You know what I'm saying? It was all water. And so what I did was, guys, we were to be spending the next entire day in Venice. Wouldn't you know, one of my least favorite cities. So what I did was when I saw that I was not doing well the next morning, and I still had that bladder infection, I panicked and I just said to myself, okay, I'm gonna relax. I had that sore throat. I took Tylenol. I watched YouTube. I told the tour guide I'm gonna stay behind today because I'm not feeling well. I've come down with something, and they were all griping, oh, and but the night before at dinner, they had been so sweet, and they all presented me with a cake and card and little tiny gifts. And I was enchanted with everything there, guys. It was the most favorite of all of the other hotels, my most favorite hotel, right on my birthday. And it was just unbelievable. If I had to describe it, I couldn't because it was so charming and quaint. And my room is okay. The shower leaked, but it was beautiful. It wasn't like all the other people's rooms. Of course not. Mine leaked. But I was so pleased to have it, and I took pictures of it. And, I would never forget that. I'll never forget that place. I have to go back. I have to go back there. It was so relaxing. I just listened to my music, my iPod, and I watched YouTube, and I relaxed, guys. I read my magazines about art history, and I wasn't on YouTube then. I was on Twitter, so I remember signing into Twitter, and I was really enchanted about the whole thing. I was so glad that I had a chance to stay behind and relax because it made a big difference. I felt better the next day, but I was still sick. I was still sick. And I remember that day we were going to Ferrara. And so it was beautiful, guys. I saw the castle. We saw a couple of castles. Um, I think we saw the Borgia Castle as well. And it's bits and pieces here and there with all the cathedrals. But I remember I have hundreds of pictures, guys, of all the artifacts that were left in the castle. And we went to an opera house. Um, I was enchanted, guys. I was so enchanted with the whole thing. And that I was sick didn't really make that much of a difference to me because I was still having a wonderful time. Of course, that woman kept sneaking up on me and really unnerving me. That was the only thing that actually put me out of my comfort zone. Because within that group, I was pretty comfortable. I remember snapping at somebody, and or somebody snapping at me once, or ignoring me or giving me the cold shoulder until they realized that I was actually pretty sick. And so, yeah, I was fine. Things like that don't really tend to bother me that much anyway. So, okay, Ferrara. And then, what did we do after that? Okay, we went to the Medici Palace where there's a hotel. And again, I went on YouTube. And I remember it was a time just before Trump was elected. And I remember all the news, no matter what I watched, it was all about that. And it was comforting to have some little bits and pieces from home, you know. When you're not feeling well and you're that far away from home, it makes me relax. It made me really relax. And so the next day, however, we were, let me see, Medici Palace. Okay, the next day we were headed to Bologna. Now, I have relatives in Bologna, and however, they all go up to the mountain in the summer. And this I also knew before I left. And so, you know, I took one of the first tours out that season. And the one that went before that was fully booked. I would have managed to see my aunt had it not been for that May tour being fully booked. So, but she always leaves after June. And so here I am in July. I couldn't even call her because I would have had a lot of time to do it. And then I remember feeling well enough to walk around the city a little bit near the hotel before dinner. And I wasn't doing too badly. I wasn't doing too badly. But then, guys, I think, you know what I noticed? Every time I took a shower, it might have been the water. Since we left Como, the other hotel that we went to after Como in Venice, it made me sick. It may have been something in the water. It could have been that. I'm not sure. But I imagine it followed me to Bologna because as soon as I had my shower and washed my hair, the same thing happened. Something changed drastically, and I noticed that I was staining again for the second day in a row, and I thought, no, that can't be because I don't stain anymore. So what I did was, guys, I was supposed to go out to dinner with the group. I had promised them. No, 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 no more ifs, ands, or no's, or buts. You're coming, and I never showed up. Well, what I did was I had to call a doctor to my room. And you know, here I am in a hotel where my family lives in the city. And these hotel personnel, they thought I was inviting a man up to my room. I could just tell by the way that they were looking at me. And I thought, if I weren't so sick, I would go down there and give them a piece of my mind. But I was too sick to care. So the doctor came up, and I remember he bought these syringes with him, and I was supposed to be giving myself shots or something. I don't remember how I was supposed to be administering the medication. Um, really, guys, that is all a blur. But I remember coming home with syringes. And I know that the border patrol here in my country, they kind of look at that, I'll tell you. But no, it was medication for my bladder infection. And I remember having pills as well. So I don't know what those syringes were all about. I can't for the life of me. I don't know what it was. So it's a big blank. I can't remember, guys. But that's how they administer medication in Italy, with syringes. And it's creepy and gross. So anyway, what I did was I explained the next morning. Nobody was talking to me. In Bologna, at breakfast, nobody spoke to me. Nobody looked at me in the group. And then I showed them all my medication, and they all came running. I said, what do you want me to do? I'm sick. I have a bladder infection. It's one thing after another. I said, it's been one thing. First, my insect bite, medicine for that. Then my cold and my fever. No medicine for that. I took those big aspirin, which really, they're wonderful, guys. You put one of those in your water and you drink it, and you feel 100% better within no time. But eventually I ran out. So they were all very apologetic, and they couldn't believe what I'd been through. So, guys, it was the second time that I toured Europe and ended up needing medical treatment. And so, okay, it was a little scary at the time. A little scary because I wasn't feeling good enough to break away from the group the way that I really wanted to. I love that place, guys. I have to go back there. And I panicked because I wasn't feeling good, and I was a little afraid about how I was going to make it home. How do I get to the airport? Because you have to take a ferry, and I didn't know if anybody was going to try to screw me over. All those things that when you're traveling in a strange country, you have to kind of have concern about them. But anyway, I did manage to make it to the Rome airport the next day with the group. And wouldn't you know, our flight was delayed 4 hours. So it's almost as though I didn't lose any time at all coming. It was the strangest day. I left at 10 o'clock in the morning, and I got back to my country at 6 o'clock in the evening. You know what I mean? And it was surreal. But I remember telling the airport staff, when I was checking in, I said, I'm sorry, but I can't stand up. Is there any way that you can, let me go to my gate now, earlier? Oh, yeah. And then we'll delay it another 4 hours. By the time, guys, that I got home, like I had done so much walking at the Rome airport, by the time that I got home with what I had wrong with me, mind you, and then I didn't explain to you Assisi. The morning before we got to Bologna, we went to Assisi, and I did a lot of walking. I took my medicine, so that I told it wrong. I didn't see the doctor the night before I left. I saw the doctor 2 nights before I left. So I had that chance to enjoy my last day a little bit, and I was feeling better. I was able to go to the bathroom. I was passing water fine. I was feeling better. I wasn't 100%. I was still swollen. And my legs, guys, with all the walking that I did in Assisi, which I loved, and all the walking that I did in the Rome airport, my legs, the bottom of my calves were like that. When I got through the door here, My mother, the first thing she did was look at me, look at my legs, and scream. She says, "You're going to the hospital right now." I said, "Oh no, I'm going straight to bed because I'm exhausted. I don't know whether I'm coming or going." She says, "Okay, but tomorrow you're going to the hospital. No ifs, ands, or buts." Okay. And so, guys, it was unbelievable. Even though I had a carry-on, I had to wait my luggage because I was the first to arrive. It was the last to come out. Damn, I hate it when that happens. And so I had to spend extra time at my airport waiting for that little. I actually packed an extra luggage because my other one was kind of breaking with all the off and on the bus. And I just that I don't feel like dragging it through the airport because I'm not feeling good. So I'm going to check it. And it wasn't very big, but it was heavy, and I wasn't going to manage feeling the way that I was. So I had to wait. I bought a carry-on for the express purpose of not waiting for luggage. And here I was at the airport waiting for my luggage. And finally it came through, and I was home before 7. It was, guys, it was such a great feeling because even though I'd had a great time, I was so happy to be here. Not that I love home so much, but I was so relieved to be able to relax and not worry about what people are going to do or think or say to me. It's not that I don't care what other people think, but I was sick. I had it. I didn't know what to do. Mind you, I'd had bladder infections before. My first one when I was 11 years old. And so it's been, my mom and I used to get them all the time when we went to our beach house. I think it's also change of climate. It could happen. Down there was extremely hot. And sometimes the air was so dry and hot that it's not good for your body. And all those old buildings, the pavement beating down on you with the sun, it can't be that healthy, can it? I don't know how I caught it, but I'm sure that there are many diseases going around. And actually the plague hit Venice. I think it was the first port to hit. So I'm not surprised that I got sick in Venice, but I'm sure it was because of all those other goings on all mixed together, and maybe an after effect of my other medication for the insect bite. I don't know. But guys, it was one of the most beautiful trips. Pisa, Verona, and Como really stood out to me. I think those are magical cities, and if you haven't had a chance to see them, you really should, because they're unbelievable. And if I worked and were to retire, I would pick Como. For sure, Como, because my mind keeps going back there. It was like a magical time. It was like a magical city. It was so, okay, they treat tourists differently there, but Sophonisba Anguissa actually comes from right around there, and she actually comes from Cremona. Is it Milan? The Duchy of Milan. And so it's that region, guys. It's northern Italy. It's that region. And everything there sparkles. You look at a tree, it sparkles because of the reflection of the water and the humidity. It shingles. It's all in the air. Venice was a little drier, but I noticed out where Como was, oh my God, guys, it was so beautiful and humid. I love that humidity. And, racing around the ocean in the ferry was the most exhilarating feeling I'd had in such a long time. Being out there in the ocean with that breeze man, that was such a nice feeling. Out in the middle of nowhere with all those beautiful valleys and Alps, surrounding you. It was something else. It was something else. It was incredible. And I never want to forget it. I'm glad that I have all those digital photographs because if I ever want to make a painting or a sketch, I have it. I have it. And now I know why Stefanisba Anguissa was so motivated to capture all of that on canvas. Who couldn't? You have to recreate it, even if it's just a memory. It's too beautiful to save all for just that one moment that you see it. You want it to last and last and last. But anyway, guys, I did go to the hospital the next day, and I was okay. I think I was prescribed more medication, different medication, but it was all good. Within about 3 or 4 days, I was as good as new. And I remember going out to dinner the very next night with my mom because I hadn't had my birthday with her yet, and she was so relieved that I was home. I could tell she had been very worried. Although before I left, she couldn't have cared less. She cared about the insect bite. She was worried. But she said, if you have to go, go, go. I don't care anymore. Go. So, of course, I could have opted to just not board the plane. But no, I would have really suffered over that. So, I'm glad I went. And maybe one day I'll be able to share the photographs with you or the movies. I didn't take too many movies. Just on Como, on the Lake of Como. That's it, guys. That's all. Everything else is still photographs. So, what can I say? Anyway, I hope that you have got some enjoyment out of this story time. It wasn't that much of a story time, but it was still quite an adventure for me because every day was something brand new, and that's what I like. I don't like going on trips all the time where everything is going to be the same day in, day out. You need a little excitement once in a while, don't you? So anyway, thank you so much for listening and watching, and please don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye for now.